After watching Eye Contact, I believe that it deserves a 2 out of 5-star rating. The entirety of the film is of a woman running on a forest path and to a lighthouse and back. And while she's running, a strange figure appears when she's at the top of the lighthouse. So after she sees that, she resumes running, goes down the lighthouse and out. And when she's on the path, she sees the figure at the top of the lighthouse. And so as the woman runs, every time she looks back, the shadow figure is behind her and it gets closer. And so it follows her to her house, where it somehow manages to kill her. And the police and coroner come, but at that point it's nightfall. And as the coroner drives off, he sees two shadow figures behind them, one of which is the woman. Now, as with any horror or thriller film, the filmmaker most likely wanted the viewer to be on the edge of their seat the whole time. And so there are only so many ways and techniques that a movie can use to create suspense, that when they do use them, they need to make sure that they use them correctly. They did not use very many literary devices in the film, except for foreshadowing. And now the foreshadowing, it may have been unintentional, but when she was running off of the path and onto the road, she was backlit for just a moment, kind of like this, and her entire body was just a silhouette. And so, I believe that shows to foreshadow how eventually she becomes only a silhouette. And so, unlike literary devices, they used a lot of film techniques in the film, which, I mean, obviously they would. But, they had a lot of low shots of her feet running. And while I do think that one or two of those are good in a film when, the character is running, they had a lot of them, and that was just a little too much. And so they also did a lot of sweeping shots as she was running on the path and when she was going up the stairs at the lighthouse and other times. And the special effects for the figure, they could have been better, but I believe the film came out quite a few years ago, so it may have been good at that time. And so, let's see, the camera angles. They were good for the most part, but a lot of times they were a little shaky and kind of tilted weird, and that just, I'm not a big fan of that. And so they could have been better. It's just the filmmaker's choice. And they had a lot of close-up angles of the woman's face, especially on the lighthouse. And inside the home, they felt kind of cramped, I guess you could say. And so, I did not really enjoy that. And last but not least, the soundtrack. Now the soundtrack is very important in any suspenseful film because that's what helps create the suspense in the first place. In any movie, you could see someone running on a path, and it could be happy, cheerful music, and it would be fine. It would feel happy. But I feel like they relied on the soundtrack a little too much. And so, the soundtrack, while they relied on it too heavily, and the way they had it, especially when things were building up, it almost to me sounded like nails on a chalkboard-esque, or maybe even a fork scraping on a plate. And they had a jump scare, and they used the soundtrack heavily there. And I feel like if they had lightened up on that and just let the jump scare be the jump scare, it would have been a lot better for everyone. And now, This film, it was not award-winning by any means, but it also wasn't that bad. The biggest strengths that it had was the editing and the transitions and the casting. They did phenomenal. And the best part of it was the ending. I love how they did the ending. If they could get the actors to show just a little bit more emotion, maybe fix up the graphics and the soundtrack, it would be an amazing film for anyone to put their name on. Except for like big people. Like for film students, it would be perfect. And another fix would be to shorten up the intro. That first part when it shows her running all the way to getting to the lighthouse, it was about 2.5 minutes before they got to that point. And that was just far too long in my opinion, and it kind of lost me. And I'm sure it would lose a lot of other people. And the film itself, it was average in most parts and a little below average in everything else. But it was very memorable. But the most memorable part, in my opinion, was the jump scare because it was like boo, and the ending. The ending was phenomenal. They did amazing on that. The acting in it was good. The graphics, they were there. And it was just perfect. Okay, thank you.